Boom. So let's just wait. So in the meantime, uh, get some footage over here. All right. So for this camera, we're gonna do some different questions. So get you right here. So now I want you, this camera, tell me what do you think is going to happen to the housing market in the next year?
What do I think is going to happen to the housing market in the next year? I think the housing market in certain spots is going to come down quite a bit. I don't think it's going to be a crash like 2006, 2008 range where you're going to see, half your values just disintegrated. But I do think you're going to see 10 to 20% more depression in the housing market, especially those areas that saw the biggest increases. The bigger the mortgage, the bigger the interest rate, the bigger the payment, people are able to afford less. It's just going to drive those prices down. We're seeing it in the Phoenix market, Scottsdale, Arizona, for sure. You're seeing houses stay on the market. They never used to stay on the market. Last year they were gone before they were even listed, or they were gone a day or two after they were listed for full prices. Typically, you had to have a cash offer. We had some people that were even writing letters to the sellers to try to get them to, tell them a sob story like, hey, my grandpa lives next door and they're not doing well. He's about to pass away. I got to have this house. And so these houses would just sell like hotcakes. That's not happening anymore. And it didn't take very long for that to turn around. So I really think in the next year, next 12 to 16 months, you're going to see prices continue to come down across the United States, but especially in those markets like New York, California, Chicago, Phoenix, where they increased greatly. So you're going to start to see that come down. And thanks for joining us on the lives here. We're the pre-show podcast. We're about to shoot the podcast, Casita Conversations. Check it out. But pre-show, we want to give you a chance to interact and ask us some questions. I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on the podcast today. We're going to have a very respected anesthesiologist, physician on the podcast. We're going to talk a lot about what finance means to doctors and high income earners. We're going to talk a lot about why doctors get into what they get into and just kind of explore what happens when you spend the first 15 years of your adulthood in school before you can make money and then go out and start making some real money. So that's going to be a very fun podcast to have today. Looking forward to joining Chris. In the meantime, we're shooting some videos. We're live here. If you want to ask me some personal questions about finance or lifestyle in general, happy to answer those questions. I've been a certified financial planner for 20 years. Bunch of other designations behind my name: chartered financial consultant, accredited investment fiduciary. I have a hedge fund. I have a financial planning practice personally. I also help other advisors, insurance agents, and financial planners in their practices as well. I've been doing this almost my whole life. I'm not quite dead yet, but it's been a good ride. So feel free to jump on. We're on YouTube. We're on TikTok, and you can ask the questions that you want to ask. So Hassan jumped in for the first question, which was what's going on with the housing market. We talked a little bit about that. The housing prices are coming down. Interest rates are going up. People are able to afford a little bit less than they could in the past because they're paying more money to the banks. So when you have to pay more in interest, the bank gets more of your money. You have a little less money to pay for the house. So that's driving prices down. And I think we're going to continue to see that. Hassan, next question. He's staring off into space, thinking very deeply right now.
What do you think is going to happen to the interest rates within the next year? Are they going to go higher, lower, or will they remain at where they're at?
What's going to happen to interest rates over the next year? Interest rates are going to keep going up, and it's kind of already known. The stock market, we've already kind of priced in another 25 basis point increase. 25 basis points is 0.25%, so it's not a huge jump, but that is going to drive the federal funds rate up to some of its highest levels in the past 2 decades. So you're going to see those interest rates keep going up. Really, they're going to keep going up until we start to see a slowdown in the economy, and we're not seeing that. We saw a jobs report that came out that just obliterated what they expected. Unemployment's at an all-time low. There's more jobs in the marketplace and less unemployed people than there were back to 1969. So the economy as a whole, from a job perspective, an employee market perspective, is doing really well. I think until that starts to change a little bit, until people start to have a little bit less money to spend, the interest rates are going to continue to go up for the foreseeable future. For sure, for the next year, I think it's safe to say for the next 12 months, we're going to be in this higher interest rate, 4, 5, 6% interest rate environment. That's an easy one. Next question, Mr. Hassan.
Next question is, all right, do you know the saying, don't put your eggs in a basket, all in one basket?
I have heard the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I think the Easter Bunny created that saying.
Okay. Do you believe in that saying, or do you believe in diversifying?
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. You really have to diversify. You can't put all your eggs in one basket.
But what about characters like Steve Jobs and these other characters that have succeeded by putting their eggs in one basket, like Elon Musk went all in with PayPal, those kinds of scenarios?
Yeah, so when you don't have a lot of eggs, that's not hard to do, right? I mean, when you've only got 1 or 2 eggs, sometimes they have to end up in one basket just to get the job done. And that's what they had. You know, when Steve Jobs put all of his eggs in the Apple basket, he only had a couple eggs to use. And so that was a no-brainer, because if you lose 1 egg, you can go get another egg. But when you have 6 billion eggs, you don't want to lose all 6 billion eggs overnight, and you certainly don't want to put all of them in the same place to get stepped on all at once. So I think it's a matter of how many eggs you have. But once you get to the point where you've got more than a dozen eggs, then you need to have another carton. Good enough? All right, what else you got?
Let's see.
Hey, thanks for joining us. We're a pre-show podcast here. We're about to shoot the Casita Conversations podcast. In the meantime, we're taking about 20 minutes to answer some of your personal finance questions and lifestyle questions that we typically answer on the podcast, but we can kind of tailor them a little bit better towards you when we just are on one-on-one. In the meantime, while there's questions rolling in, my good friend Hassan, who, let's see if anyone wants to see us down there. He's over there behind other cameras. There's other cameras floating around over here. He's asking some questions. So post your questions. We'll answer them directly. And Hassan, you're up next.
All right. So let's see.
He's starting to sweat, by the way. So please post your questions, because he has to keep coming up with his own questions.
All right. So let's say I had $10,000 in my bank account, right? And I had consistent income of $4,000 a month with $2,000 in expenses. How much should I be investing?
All right, run me those numbers again. $4,000 you're making.
$10,000 in my bank account.
$10,000 in your bank account.
$2,000 expenses for the month.
$2,000 expenses for the month.
$4,000 total every month. So $2,000 profit. 2's gone.
4,000.
10 in the bank.
10 in the bank. Hold on. Okay, 10 in the bank.
10 in the bank. And
2,000 expenses.
2 profit every month.
2 profit. So you got 2,000 after expenses.
Yes.
All right. How much of that should you be investing?
Correct.
How much debt do you have?
Let's say this person already has paid off their debt, because obviously your debt is where you're
Debt free. All right. So let's say you're debt free. You've got an extra $2,000 a month. How much of that should you be spending?
With $10,000 in the bank account. Right?
With $10,000 in the bank account. That's a good number. So leave the $10,000 there. If your expenses are $2,000, that's 5 months worth of expenses in your account for an emergency fund. That's a smart thing to do. So keep the $10,000 in the account. Don't touch that. But you've got $2,000 extra a month to invest. Now, if I said invest all $2,000, that would be the smartest mathematical answer. However, that never happens, because if you're investing all of your extra money, all of your play money, then you're not playing with any of your money. And humans in general can't seem to do that. So what I would say, a good rule of thumb is 20% of your entire income is a pretty healthy investment rate. So if you're telling me you're making $4,000, 20% of that, $800, let's round up maybe to 1,000, since you've got 2,000 extra to spend. So take 2,000 of that and invest it, and use the other, take 1,000 of that 2,000 to invest it, and use the other 1,000 to play with. So about 20% of your gross income, if you're making $4,000, $800 is a good amount to invest on a monthly basis if you can do it consistently. The problem with investing all of your money, your $2,000 that was left over, is you can't be consistent about that. If you could do it for a month or two, but it's kind of like a diet. If you go on an extreme diet, you're gonna fail eventually because you can't sustain it. It's not sustainable. So you might do it for 90 days and you might lose a ton of weight, but you're gonna find coming off that diet, you just gain all of that weight right back. And when you gain all of that weight right back, then you totally just wasted that 90 days. We see this a lot in investments, and people just start off in investing with that same exact question. They say, I got $2,000 extra. And a lot of financial advisors will tell them, because they want as many assets as they can get from the client, to invest all $2,000 of that. Well, when you invest all $2,000 of that, what happens is you do that for a month, 2, or maybe even 3. And then at month 3, all of a sudden you find out that you need a little bit of money and you don't have any extra play money. So what do? You go back and you dip it in that investment account, and all of a sudden you start to drain that investment account. It's not sustainable. So take 20% of your gross and use that to invest. All right, next question.
All right, so so let's say nowadays everybody's getting a second job or they're picking up a side hustle. How much should they be making on a minimum from their side job or side hustle? Because like, let's say they're doing DoorDash or they're doing Uber Eats. These places, they pay like $12 an hour, which is less than minimum wage. So what is the number that they should be hitting to where it's like the side hustle or the second job makes sense?
I think it depends on what your goal is. The side hustle and the second job makes sense if you have a goal for it. If you're doing a side hustle or second job just for play money, then I don't think it matters what you make, as long as you're making something, as long as you're not breaking even. So the problem with some of these jobs like DoorDash, Uber, some of those kind of things, is if you don't calculate your expenses correctly, you might just be breaking even or possibly losing money. If you're spending, 40 cents a mile, let's say, with maintenance and gas and insurance and all the things to upkeep your car, and you're not making that when you're doing your deliveries or taking people around in Ubers, you're just breaking even. That's a really bad side hustle. So first of all, make sure you're making some money. And then secondly, set your goal. What's your goal for your side hustle? If your goal for your side hustle is just to make some play money, then it doesn't really matter what that side hustle is. If your goal for your side hustle is to pay off your debt, then you need to set like a time frame. What's your time frame for your debt? Let me give you an example. Let's say you have 10 grand in debt and you want to pay it off in 1 year. So you have 12 months to pay it off. You need about $850 a month in a side hustle. So you can work back from that number. Once you have your goal set and you know that it's $850, then it really doesn't matter what side hustle you have. You just have to know that you can make $850 a month. If you can make that doing DoorDash, or you can make that on Fiverr, or you can make that on Uber, then fine. It doesn't matter as long as you can make the number of your goal. So if you have $10,000 in debt and you want to pay it off in 12 months, you need a side hustle that'll pay you $850 after expenses. Make sure you're calculating your expenses correctly, and then take home $850 after that. And then that's the goal, and you've satisfied your goal with that side hustle. All right. While he's thinking, thanks for joining us. We're about to shoot our Casita Conversation podcast. We got about 8 minutes left before we go live on the podcast. And so that's 8 minutes for you to ask your questions. We talk about all kinds of lifestyle and financial things here. So feel free to chime in. And all I'm doing right now is buying Assad some time to ask the next question. So this might be your last one. You better be fucking good. A lot of pressure on him to ask a good question. So you said you were in, you've been in this industry for 25 plus years and know this. 23, motherfucker, you make me older.
Oh my God. 23, you've been in the industry. So tell me, like, just tell me like how you even got it in it and what made you even want to do it. Because like, let's say I want to get into finance. And I'm a kid that maybe I graduated college, or maybe I just got out of high school. Is it even possible to do it out of high school? That's one thing. And then let's say I'm out of college. Am I at a higher position? Should I be looking for something different? What if I wanted to be in your position as a hedge fund or as a financial advisor? How do I do it?
How do you get into my position as a hedge fund manager or financial advisor? It's really interesting. There's two paths into the financial advising world. One of the paths is through sales. So if you're a good salesperson or you have a good personality and you like to talk to people, you can get a job in the insurance and financial industry overnight with all kinds of companies any time of year. It doesn't matter what the job market looks like, whether it's up or down, or whether unemployment is high or not. You can always get a job in the financial services industry, which actually is pretty freaking scary because you don't need much other than a personality if you want to be on the sales side of things. That's actually how I got started in this whole process. Is I responded to an ad. I didn't know I was responding to an ad to sell insurance, but that's what I did. I responded to an ad to sell insurance back when they still had ads in the newspapers and the penny savers. Flipping through help wanted, it said make $1,000 and work 4 days a week. And this was back in 1998. So when you could make $1,000 a week working 4 days a week, that seemed pretty powerful to me. So I went on that job interview. What I didn't know, it was commission only, no salary, and I was going to go door to door, and I was going to try to sell insurance, health insurance policies. So I was kind of tricked into the industry, and I'm so glad I was. But that is from the sales side. So if you're going to get into it from the sales side, just know you're going to make a lot of phone calls, you're going to make a lot of cold calls, you're going to pound the pavement, and you're going to try to sell product. And that's going to be your entrance into the financial industry. That's not a bad entrance. It's just one way to get into it. When you get in that way and you start to make a little money, now you can start to invest in yourself and educate yourself, go get advanced planning degrees, start to learn more about the markets and how to manage money better. And you're really going that first 10 years learning while you earn. If you have a personality to be a salesman, you can do that. If you don't have that personality to be a salesman, then you have to get an advanced degree. You can't come out of college with a bachelor's degree, I don't care what it's in, and get a job in the financial services marketplace. You have to get an advanced degree. That may be getting a degree like a CFA, a chartered financial analyst, or like a CFP, a chartered financial certified financial planner. If you go to continue your schooling after your bachelor degree and you go to school for another couple, 3-4 years, it's almost like you're getting a doctorate in finance. You don't have to get a doctorate in finance. You can get some of those designations, but it's going to take you a few years to do that. If you do that, now you can come out of that educational process and go right into a fairly well-paying salary job as a financial analyst, as a trader on the floor, as a trader in a hedge fund, as an analyst to a hedge fund, or as a financial planner making a salary and charging flat fees for that. So there's two ways to get into it. One is the sales process. You have to have a great personality. And the other is from your educational background, which means you're going to have to put more time and obviously take on some more debt going through school to land one of those higher paying jobs.
That's good.
The only question I got was, does the ceiling fan work? That's a really interesting question. I wish I had a really interesting answer for it. The answer is it does work. Yeah. But it only works when you turn it on. It doesn't work on its own. So that would require human interaction. All right, we got to go shoot this podcast. So that's it for today. We'll go live again before the next podcast. We do these every couple of weeks. Hope to see you then. And thanks for joining.
Let's see how I did. Anything on this one? Did you even get any people on there?
No, I don't. Well, I got no